You're walking down a hallway. It's brightly lit, the temperature is perfectly controlled, and the floors are spotless. But instead of feeling comfortable, there's a heavy, sinking weight in your chest. The sound of your own footsteps echoes a little too loudly in the quiet. Look at the design. The artificial glow from the low ceiling flattens everything. There are no shadows, no natural textures, just an endless repetition of concrete pillars and painted yellow lines fading into the distance. It's an environment stripped of any variation. There is a name for this specific type of anxiety: architectural melancholy. It is the distinct psychological drop we experience when we enter a built environment that is optimized for its task, yet entirely devoid of emotional resonance. Which brings us to a strange contradiction. We spend billions of dollars engineering these modern spaces to be as logical as possible. Yet, the ultimate result of that exact, calculated efficiency is a profound sense of sadness. Usually, we associate environmental sadness with decay. We look at crumbling brick, at shattered windows, or abandoned factories, and we feel a sense of loss for what used to be there. But the modern transit hubs and corporate centers we are talking about are immaculate. These expansive airport terminals were engineered for vacant, high-capacity throughput. That void allows the building to process thousands of travelers per hour without a single point of physical friction. The emptiness is a deliberate functional requirement. Your sudden drop in mood in these places is not a random misfire of your brain. Invisible, deliberate architectural forces are managing your physical movement, and in doing so, they are dictating your emotional state. To understand how we built these spaces, we have to look back to the middle of the 20th century. Urban planners moved away from the way cities had naturally grown for thousands of years, which was slowly around local human needs. Instead, they began designing for mass scale and high-speed transit. The crowded, dense neighborhoods that defined older cities were suddenly viewed as chaotic and slow. Planners carved massive, curving highway interchanges directly through existing skylines, prioritizing the smooth flow of automobiles over the lived experience of the pedestrians below. This era championed a philosophy of addition by subtraction. The prevailing theory was that by stripping away all ornamentation, texture, and visual friction, a building would achieve its purest, most useful form. Architecturally, this resulted in the rise of the monolith. Builders poured dense blocks of concrete and steel into rigid, repeating grids. These buildings completely dominated the landscapes they sat on, offering pure utility but ignoring the scale of the people who actually worked inside them. Planners were trying to solve the very real problems of overcrowding and traffic, but in their drive to create a perfectly ordered, frictionless utopia, they engineered environments that are entirely devoid of warmth. That warmth is anchored in the human scale, the specific proportions and walking speed of the individual body. When you optimize a street for a car moving at 60 miles an hour, or a terminal for a crowd of 10,000 people, you stretch those proportions far beyond what a single person can comfortably process. Then there is the issue of materiality. Our brains instinctively seek out organic, varied textures. The dominant materials of modern infrastructure, raw concrete, structural steel, and vast panes of glass, offer nothing but harsh angles and flat, unyielding surfaces. Anthropologists use the term non-place to describe these specific types of locations. A non-place is an environment designed entirely for transient movement and commerce. You are meant to pass through it or buy something inside it, but you are never meant to stay. Look at this subway platform. It is highly effective at sheltering commuters and directing them to a train. But notice what is missing. There is almost nowhere to sit, and absolutely no architecture designed to encourage two strangers to stop and talk. Community requires physical friction. It requires spaces where people can linger, collide, and interact. By designing spaces exclusively for speed, we eliminated the physical anchors that allow human connection to happen. This lack of friction goes against our biology. The human visual system evolved in nature, where it relies on high levels of organic complexity to feel anchored and safe. Specifically, our brains look for repeating mathematical shapes known as fractal patterns. When you step into a sterile, highly geometric modern building,
It abruptly deprives your brain of those necessary inputs. The sudden drop in visual complexity acts like a mild form of sensory deprivation. That deprivation creates an immediate psychological boundary. You retreat inward. This explains how you can live in a dense grid, surrounded by thousands of other people and towering residential blocks, and still feel entirely cut off from the rest of the world. The spaces engineered specifically to house and transport the largest masses of humanity actually function as sensory deprivation chambers, generating profound individual isolation. The physical impact of these spaces is now surfacing in public health data. This atmospheric dread has moved from the realm of subjective aesthetic critique into the territory of quantifiable psychological health. This chart tracks the 50-year growth of non-place square footage alongside reported rates of urban isolation. As our environments became increasingly transient and strictly utilitarian, the data reveals two trends climbing in nearly identical arcs, suggesting a direct correlation between our built environment and social withdrawal. We often think of buildings as passive backgrounds to our lives. The reality is that the physical structures we build actively construct our internal psychological states. If you frequently feel alienated or drained in a modern city, it is important to recognize that this is a systemic design flaw. You are reacting exactly the way your biology is programmed to react to an unnatural environment. Fixing this requires a complete rethinking of how we approach urban planning. So, the next time you find yourself standing in a vast, pristine public space, and you feel a sudden, crushing wave of emptiness, remember to look at the walls around you. Don't blame yourself. Blame the architecture.